Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Literary Canon. Today I'm going to be talking about Juan Rulfo's 1955 novel, Pedro Páramo. This is a very, very influential book in Latin American literature and in Mexican literature especially. It's probably the most well-known Mexican novel that's been written. It's very short. It's only 123 pages, so really it's more of a novella, but it is very, very heavy hitting. I finished it last Wednesday, and it was so good, and there was so much that I wanted to look at again, and so much that I missed that I immediately started it over and read it again, front to back, and finished it in just a day or two. This novel is really the first novel that kind of kicked off the literary movement that Latin American literature is so well known for, which is surrealism and magical realism. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who, if you don't know, is the author of 100 Years of Solitude, probably the most well-known magical realist author and the most well-known magical realism novel in Latin America. He was absolutely in love with this book, and it did influence 100 Years of Solitude. Gabriel Garcia Marquez actually said that he could recite the entire book from front to back and back to front without any error, which, who knows if that's actually true, but it certainly had a huge impact, a huge influence on his work. So contained within these brief 123 pages is a very dark, morbid tale of obsession, lies, greed, power, spirituality, life, and death. And it's fantastic. So essentially, the way it starts out is there's a couple different narratives, but the narrative begins with one of our many narrators, a young man, maybe a young boy named Juan Preciado, and he's on his mother's deathbed, and his mother asks him to return to the town where Juan was born, which he doesn't remember. They left it very early, but to return to the town where he was born and to find his father, a man named Pedro Páramo, and to claim what he was obligated to give but never did, and also to make him pay dearly for the indifference he showed them. So clearly, Pedro Páramo is a character who's kind of at the center of this novel. So Juan makes the journey to Comala, the town where he was born. Comala, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but he makes this journey there. It's probably the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he finds that the town is a literal ghost town. It is filled with the wandering echoes and spirits of the town's former citizens who were never able to find absolution, to find redemption in life. So they're stuck in this weird purgatory. And from that point, once Juan enters the town, the narrative sort of dissolves into this non-linear stream of visions and memories in which Juan Preciado and we, the reader, learn the history of the town and the history of who Pedro Páramo was. And without any spoilers, Pedro Páramo is essentially the town's patron, in Spanish, the town's boss. So he owned a ranch on the outskirts of the town. He was a landowner. He was probably the richest man in town, and sort of everything eventually falls to him. He's essentially the de facto head of the town, just because he's rich and owns all this land. And he's not a very nice person. So the narrative is wound up with Pedro Páramo, and at the center of all of it is this kind of horrid love affair he has with a girl from his youth who they were very much in love, but she suddenly had to leave the town. And when she returns, she's already married, and her first husband has died, and she's gone insane. And Pedro Páramo kind of becomes broken from this this woman who's not able to provide him what he wants. It's the one thing sort of that he can't control, and this breaks him. And there's a whole lot that goes on within the pages. I mean, it's very short, but a lot happens. And really, just the thing that's so great about this novel is how seamlessly the narrative can switch viewpoints and narrators and times. You move forward in time, you move backwards in time, you switch narrators without any warning. It's really a pleasure to read, but it is difficult. You have to be attentive, you have to be paying attention, and really, to get the most out of it, a reread is very merited. So I want to read a quick section at the beginning when Juan is first in the town, and he hasn't realized yet that everyone he's encountering are ghosts. And he's let into kind of this boarding house, this hotel, by a woman named Eduviges Diada. And she has disappeared for the night. He can't really find her. He's hearing these awful screams. And then suddenly, his door flies open. He says, "Is that you, Doña Eduviges?" I asked. "What's going on? Were you afraid?" "My name's not Eduviges. It's Damiana. I heard you were here and came to find you. I wanted to invite you to spend the night at my house. You'll be able to get some rest there." "Damiana Cisneros? Aren't you one of the women who lived out at the Media Luna?" And the Media Luna is the name of the ranch that Pedro Páramo owns. "That's where I live. That's why it's taken me a while to get here. My mother told me about a Damiana who took care of me after I was born. Would that be you?" "Yes, that's me. I've known you since you first opened your eyes." "I'll come with you. I can't get any rest here with all the screaming. Didn't you hear all the racket? As if someone were being killed. Didn't you hear that just now?" "Perhaps it's an echo trapped inside here. It was in this very room where they hanged Toribio Aldrete quite a few years ago. They sealed the door afterward and left his body to dry out so he wouldn't find any peace. I can't imagine how you got in since there's no key to open the door." "It was Doña Eduviges who let me in. She said it was the only room available." "Eduviges Diada? That's her. Poor Eduviges. Her soul must still be in torment." So he finds out, of course, that Eduviges, the woman who let him into this boarding house, is dead. And every person he meets, except for two, but almost every person he meets in the town are spirits who are just trapped in the town. You find out a little bit about the town's priest, who was sort of corrupt, and would really only give blessings and redemption, absolution to Pedro Páramo and anyone Pedro Páramo was able to pay for. And eventually, the priest goes off and joins the Mexican Revolution and leaves everyone else there, and they're no longer able to get their sins redeemed. So they're trapped there in spirit. I feel as if I'm not doing it justice describing it. It is a very short read, but really incredibly worth it. You will have a blast reading this. It's eerie, it's spooky, but it also, it really just, it kind of makes you slow down and appreciate all the different things you can do with literature. The time switches are really incredible. The very first one that happens, Juan Preciado, is he just entered the town and found Eduviges Diada. And it begins to rain outside, and a new paragraph starts, and it says, "Water dripping from the roof tiles was making a hole in the sand of the patio. It sounded drip, drip, and then again drip as it landed on a laurel leaf that bounced around while staying stuck in a crack between the bricks. The storm had moved on. An occasional breeze would shake the leaves of the pomegranate tree, making them shed a heavy rain whose shimmering drops left a pattern on the ground before turning to mist." And every time kind of water and rain is involved, you know you're about to see a switch in perspective, a switch to a different time. It's really quite incredible. Of course, one of the novel's main themes is death. And I'm still trying to wrap my head a bit around some of the deaths we encounter. We see, of course, that the one thing that every single human has in common is that they will die. There are characters in the book who die from murder, characters who die from natural causes, from accidents, from disease, from fright. But everyone eventually perishes. And yet it's their echoes and their memories that remain behind. And there seems to be two different kinds of spirits in the town. There are wandering spirits who almost seem alive at first, but then there are also the voices and the memories of the corpses that are buried in the graveyard of the town, which is quite interesting. So yeah, that's Pedro Páramo. Honestly, Pedro Páramo. Honestly, this is the best book I've read this year, without a doubt. Short and sweet, but it packs a punch. It is fantastic. You will have a blast reading this. Highly recommended. 5 stars. Go read it. Thank y'all for watching. I know this is a shorter video. I plan on having another video in just a couple days about John Gardner's Grendel, which is also very good and is probably my second favorite book of the year. So be ready for that. And then I'm not sure what's next, but yeah. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment with any book recommendations. Have a good day.